Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Good evening, dissidents. Welcome one and all to another edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
What's up, everybody? We hope you're all having a good Sunday. Getting cold up here in the Northeast, obviously, and we have a big show for everybody tonight, so I hope you are nice and warm. Hope you got some spiced apple cider, maybe some spiked spice apple cider, if that's how you roll. My wife and I had one of those last night, with a little black rum in there. That's good, man. There's nothing like fall weather. Nothing like fall weather.
It's getting nippy out. It's very nice, though. It's very nice. Although I got stuck doing a tour in, like, that cold autumn rain the other day,
yeah.
which was terrible. Yeah,
that
was horrible.
Russell, I just realized, I should have told you this earlier. Is there a way to adjust your framing without unplugging the camera? Because you see how there we go. Beautiful. Boom. Beautiful. Now we got a set. I'll handle it like that.
You should have told me that earlier.
I meant to, but, obviously we have a huge show tonight, and so there was a lot of prep, and it just slipped my mind. And there's always a risk in asking you to do it on the air, since that USB port of yours is kind of feisty.
It can be a little flaky.
It can be a little flaky, You rub it the wrong way, it can decide it doesn't want to work anymore,
Like a woman.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly. It's like a woman in that way. So, folks, we have a big show for you guys tonight here. Big crowd in here, 454 strong in the YouTube chat. Our producer, Jake, is in the house. Rumble 134 over in the Rumble chat. So that's fantastic to see. We love a nice big crowd in here for this evening. For those of you guys who are here for the first time, we had a lot of new subscribers over the last few days, thanks in no small part to the Jimmy Dore Show. So thank you to Jimmy, and thank you to Pasta and Kurt and Misha for having us. We had a great time. And I know a lot of you guys are here for the first time because you saw us for the first time over there. So we definitely want to give a shout out and a thank you to those guys for, giving us some exposure to a new audience. That was a lot of fun.
We never expected to get this many people to get on board with our campaign to make Nancy Pelosi speaker again. So we thank you for joining us in that effort.
We lured you in. We lured you all in. It's funny that we finally made it onto the Jimmy Dore Show. That's like the Johnny Carson in this space. You know what I mean? Yeah. And who'd have thought
we played the palace.
Yeah, exactly. Who'd have thought the first question I'd be asked on the Jimmy Dore Show is, so Keaton, give me your definition of a self-hating Jew. I was like, oh, wow, we're off to a wonderful start here. But it was a great time.
It's good for the memoir.
Exactly. Yes. It was a great time.
I finally, it was. And that was great of Pasta to have us on. That was a great experience. My fun story for the week is, I think for the first time I lost a tour because of the show.
That's right.
I finally lost a tour because of the show. I had a Jewish group, and I mentioned that I had a show that morning, and they asked what the name of our show was, and I told them, and they had a second tour scheduled, and they canceled that tour saying they had a flight cancellation. You don't have a flight cancellation a week out like that. That doesn't happen. No, they watched the show.
They should have just asked for another guide, you know what I mean?
Well, that particular, it's good they didn't, but that particular company is basically, they are a middleman doing the marketing and getting you the business, but you create and post your own tours. So you can't just swap out the guide like that because my tours are my tours.
Right. Exactly. So what are you going to do? But, that comes with the territory. Comes with the territory, folks. So here's what we're going to do tonight. Tonight, Sunday night, we have a very special show planned, as I mentioned, on the Substack and on the Patreon and on the previous show. Tonight's show is a split stream. So we're going to do the first batch of segments here on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, and Twitch. And then we are switching exclusively to Rumble and Twitter. We will run the stream there as well for the second half. But we will be exclusively on Rumble for the second half of the show. So rumble.com/do dissidents. That's where you want to go to catch the second half of the show. So after the first few segments, we will take about a 5-minute intermission. We'll put a little countdown clock back up on the screen and give you all 5 minutes to get over there. Rumble.com/do dissidents. You'll see obviously the live stream running. It'll be the first video once you get to that page. Click in there and then you will be all set to go. So that's how we're doing this tonight. If you are here on Rumble for the first time, please hit that follow button. If you're here on YouTube for the first time, please hit that subscribe button. And let's start some segments. We have some super chats already here, which we love to see. We will get to those in a couple of minutes. Super chats are super helpful. Tip jar is always out. We appreciate that very much. Of course, the majority of the coverage tonight is going to be on segments related to the Israel-Palestine war that's going on right now. But
well, not on Rumble though. Rumble, we're doing the election denying anti-vax trans Nazis.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Whenever we want to cover that subject, we have to go to Rumble.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. No, on Rumble we have stuff that we don't think it would break any rules here, but it would get the videos age restricted here for sensitive content and things like that. So that's why we're doing that over on Rumble. But we do have a very intense show this evening, and so we will be over there for the second half. There are some domestic politics to deal with, though, at the top of the show. Here's a story. Obviously, Kevin McCarthy was ousted as Speaker of the House. That was the big news throughout the country until, obviously, the Israel war broke out. But right now, Jim Jordan has been successfully nominated by the Republican caucus for a Speaker vote, and the Freedom Caucus is going hard for Jim Jordan. So here's from the New York Times. Jordan activates right-wing pressure campaign in push to win speakership. Allies of the Ohio Republican, who must persuade scores of his colleagues to support his bid for Speaker, are threatening right-wing retribution to any GOP lawmakers who dare oppose him. Representative Jim Jordan and his allies have begun a right-wing pressure campaign against Republicans opposed to electing him Speaker, working to unleash the rage of the party's base voters against any lawmaker standing in the way of his election. Even after Mr. Jordan, the hard-right Ohio Republican, won his party's nomination for the post on Friday, he remained far short of the 217 votes he needed to win the gavel, with scores of his colleagues refusing to back him. In efforts to close the gap, lawmakers and activists close to him have taken to social media and the airwaves to blast the Republicans they believe are blocking his path to victory and encourage voters to browbeat them into supporting Mr. Jordan. It's an extraordinary instance of Republican on Republican fighting that underscores the divisions that have wrought chaos inside the party, paralyzing the House of Representatives in the process. Several of Mr. Jordan's supporters have posted the phone numbers of mainstream GOP lawmakers they count as holdouts, encouraging followers to flood the Capitol switchboard with calls demanding they back Mr. Jordan or face the wraths of conservative voters as they gear up for primary season. You want to explain to your voters why you blocked Jordan? Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Republican of Florida, wrote on X. Then bring it. The strategy is reminiscent of the bullying tactics that Mr. Jordan and his allies have used over the past decade to pull the GOP further to the right, and borrows a page from former President Donald J. Trump, who is backing Mr. Jordan. So notice when you do this, they say you're engaging in bully tactic. It's not bully tactics. It's using the power that you have. That's called politics. That's not bullying. This is why the squad didn't want to do this, because they didn't want to be called bullies, right? They didn't want to upset civility politics, right? Oh, so now
you fuck with the, yeah. I mean, you fuck with the military-industrial complex before you know it. You go home. You stop at the corner bar for a drink. You pass out. You wake up with a dead hooker. Guy shows up, says, we can make this go away, but you got to change your vote.
Yeah, exactly. Some inside pressure campaigns, obviously, going on here. Freedom Caucus still using the leverage that they have unless they are circumvented by a deal with the Democrats, which we'll get to in a little while. But first, I want to lay this out a little bit more. Mr. Jordan's closeness with the former president, meaning Trump, has given him unparalleled cachet with the party base, and his backers were counting on that to help him prevail in a vote that could come as early as Tuesday. While Friday's votes were secret ballots, by Saturday, right-wing activists appeared to have identified about a dozen holdouts against Mr. Jordan as top targets for their onslaught. Despite being revered by hardliners and branded a, quote, legislative terrorist by a former Republican speaker, Mr. Jordan has more recently allied himself with his party's leaders. This is interesting. The Ohio lawmaker backed the debt limit deal that former Speaker Kevin McCarthy struck with President Biden and did not join the far right's move to grind the House floor to a halt in protest of that agreement or their effort to oust Mr. McCarthy. He has already said he intends to have the House vote on a stopgap spending measure to keep the government open, the sin that got Mr. McCarthy booted, and has managed to keep conservative hardliners in the camp. Now, I suspect there was a bit of deal-making, a bit of secret handshaking between Gates and Jordan, because it seems like Jordan, during that whole Republican forced the vote episode, was kind of positioning himself to appear conciliatory enough to the mainstream Republicans should this happen. In other words, should they get rid of McCarthy, Jordan wanted to be able to plausibly say, hey, look, I'm not one of these guys. I voted for McCarthy in the original vote, and I voted against ousting him, and I voted for the deal with the Democrats to circumvent the Freedom Caucus. So come on, I'm about as good as you're going to do. Aren't I? Right? I am the consensus choice that can unite the Republican Party, whereas one of the Freedom Caucus holdouts themselves would not be. I suspect that Jordan and Gates made a sort of deal that he would be able to vote that way just to be able to present as this sort of neutral pick. And the reason I say that is because Matt Gaetz nominated Jim Jordan back in that original force the vote round, right? Exactly. Matt Gaetz has wanted Jordan all along.
Yeah, that's a reasonable hypothesis. It would explain why these people who were so dead set on getting rid of McCarthy would nominate a guy who voted against getting rid of McCarthy.
Right. It seems like it's too convenient to just have worked out that way organically. By the way, folks, if you're here for the first time, I was going to set that up for people so they were a little more prepared. I always thought, how hilarious would that be if we just did that while a guest was speaking? Let's say we had an interview and the guest is speaking.
Well, if we ever get Cornell,
right over his answer, just hit that and start headbanging and be like, "What the fuck kind of show did I book?"
If we get Cornell, we're gonna create a special version of that that's like mashed up with Charlie Mingus or something.
Right, that's like a swing. Right, that's got like a little jazz groove to it. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. One more card here. But some mainstream Republicans are opposing Mr. Jordan on principle. They differ with him on matters of policy nowhere more sharply than on continuing to fund the war in Ukraine, a priority for many of them to which Mr. Jordan and his America First allies are deeply opposed. Yeah, it seems like that's really what all of this is going to end up being about. Many of them are also reluctant to reward what they see as bad behavior by giving the far-right lawmakers who forced McCarthy from his post and touched off the governing crisis their preferred leader. So one of these mainstream Republicans who no one's ever heard of is John Rutherford. He is from Florida. Reporters caught up to him asking for his take on the situation, and he says essentially that he does not want to, on principle, give Matt Gaetz the win, and he believes that since Kevin McCarthy has 96% support within the caucus, he should somehow make his way back to the speakership. So here's John Rutherford from Florida.
Oh, yeah. So tell me where you are on Jim Jordan right now.
Okay, where I'm at right now is since the folks that want to follow the majority, which is the rule, we should follow the majority. Kevin McCarthy had 96%. 4% took him out, joining with the Democrats. Now we're in conference where the Democrats don't get the vote, and I'm back with Kevin McCarthy. Since he, out of all of the folks that have thrown their hat in the ring, he is head and shoulders above the rest in the majority that he's able to put together. It was 96%.
And you're a no on Jordan on the floor right now.
I'm a no on allowing Matt Gaetz in the other 7 to win by putting their individual in as speaker.
All right. Okay. Now, you might say, well, tough luck for you. There's no way the Freedom Caucus is going to back down now. There's another possible way they can get to 217 votes for Kevin McCarthy, and that involves making some kind of deal with the Democrats. So Hakeem Jeffries appeared on Meet the Press, sort of hinting in that direction. Russell found this clip. So do you want to set this up for what we're about to see?
Yeah, the first time around, the Democrats absolutely refused to help bail out the Republicans. They saw it to their advantage to have this play out in front of the nation, this Republican chaos. But their handlers, this is my interpretation, their handlers at the military-industrial complex need that Ukraine money spigot turned back on, which means they need to stick a speaker in there who's going to approve that. So you've got a confluence of interests coming together here that could lead to a bipartisan deal, because you have never Trump Republicans, anti-Gaetz Republicans like this guy, and what he said is right. The vast majority of them did vote for McCarthy. On principle, a lot of them could feel, where does this end if we let them have their way and install their own speaker against the will of the majority? So they might decide this is a line in the sand, and they're willing to ally with the Democrats. The question is, are they willing to risk their political career to do that? So they kind of have conflicting interests. But now you have possibly enough Republicans with an interest, including their own MIC handlers, who want that Ukraine funding turned back on. And yeah, I mean, when you add that factor of them getting calls from Northrop Grumman and Boeing and Raytheon, yeah, like maybe they do make a deal. And if they do make a deal, I would think they would bring back McCarthy on general principles to rub it in their faces.
Yeah, well, we're going to play that Hakeem Jeffries clip in a second. You had me going there. I thought Boeing and Northrop Grumman merged. I said the Northrop Grumman. Yeah. I'm like, oh, was there a merger we missed? God, we should have covered that. Oh, okay. Here's Hakeem Jeffries.
It would not surprise me at all. They're going to merge, and then they're going to buy Disney.
Right, yeah, exactly. Here's Hakeem Jeffries on Meet the Press.
You'd effectively need about 5 Democrats to get on board and support a Republican speaker to have a governing coalition. Have you identified a candidate who you could potentially get behind, and would you allow your members to vote for a Republican speaker?
We have not identified any candidate on the other side of the aisle, because our focus is not on the individual. It's on the institution of Congress and the best interests of the American people, which is why what we've suggested is that we reevaluate the rules that are currently in place to facilitate bipartisan cooperation and to eliminate division.
So what you have to remember, and this is what Matt Gaetz has used this exact term, and he's far from the only one, far from the first one, obviously. He's called the Democratic and Republican sort of establishment, more centrist wings, the uniparty, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, right, when money for Ukraine is on the line,
exactly,
the uniparty has the votes if they want.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so the uniparty could just go ahead and get the votes that they want, because ultimately the interests that they serve really transcend whatever political blowback they may fear getting come primary season. Don't forget, a lot of these guys and gals have been in office for many, many cycles. It would still be extremely difficult to primary them. And, you know, look, if they show strength in numbers, you know, like Rutherford said, 96% of the Republican caucus voted to keep McCarthy. If they just decide as a bloc we're sticking with McCarthy and they make some deal with the Democrats, it's possible they might just put McCarthy back in as a fuck you to the Freedom Caucus and as a shot across the bow that don't think you're going to be able to cuck us, right, with your populism and your grassroots bullshit, right? This is still Washington, D.C. We're still bought and paid for, both parties. And they might just make a statement by doing that. That's certainly possible, because it doesn't seem like there's any other way out of this other than Jim Jordan. Like, if the Republicans wanted to just, you know, be united as a bloc, and every Republican in Washington, in the House, wanted to be able to maintain their, you know, true conservative bona fides with their base, Jordan really is the consensus pick. He positioned himself very well for that with those votes that he took during the forced to vote saga, you know, backing McCarthy while at the same time really staying in good standing with the Freedom Caucus. He was able to sort of successfully triangulate in that way. He's the consensus pick. It's hard to imagine who they go for if not him, because there's no one else who the Freedom Caucus is going to really go for except one of their own. Scalise already had to withdraw. That was a non-starter.
Yeah. I would say the odds are in favor of a bipartisan deal that brings back McCarthy, but slightly in favor, because in the end, these people do like their sinecures. They do not want to get voted out of office. And history has shown that if you stir up that Trump base in just the right way, they will come for you. And whoever they nominate might not win the general against the Democrat, but they don't seem to really give too much of a shit about that.
Right.
So, you know, especially if this very transparently boils down to turning back on the Ukraine funding.
Well, the other thing that you have to think about here, the other X factor, the other caveat is Donald Trump himself. You know, if Trump really goes to bat for Jordan and he really whips the vote for Jordan, he has the power to do that heading into, 2024. And so that's a question that I guess he'll have to answer for himself. How much does he want to get involved here? Because, you know, it's not like Donald Trump to learn a lesson, but if he learned a lesson from 2022, it's that you're better off just kind of keeping to yourself and running your own campaign rather than trying to pick winners and losers, where you obviously had a very low success rate in the midterms. But he might. He certainly might.
He might, being who he is.
Yeah, exactly.
Being who he is. He might try to install Herschel Walker as the speaker.
Exactly, yeah. It depends how invested he is. I mean, ultimately, look, I think McCarthy is going to move to impeach Biden. So, you know, that might be all Trump really wants, right? Because heading into 2024, that's going to be the most beneficial to Trump's candidacy, is just exerting maximum pressure on Biden. The other stuff, like the deficit spending, Trump never really struck me as a guy who cared very much about that. You know,
no.
Like if McCarthy will go after Biden, he's probably just as useful to Trump as Jim Jordan.
I would imagine. I mean, now that he's swung his cock around and actually said that he's backing Jordan, you know how he is. It wouldn't be like him to take the L gracefully and go gently into that good night. But in the end, hey, because you got this Ukraine money involved. That's the X factor. If you didn't have that involved, I would say, yeah, Jordan. But if it's really about that, which I think a lot of it is, I think that's the reason the Democrats are deciding to maybe do a bipartisan deal. It's all about the Ukraine funding. So, yeah, will the Uniparty get together to shut down this whole idea that you could rebel against funding war? Yeah, that they might. They might. I would say there's better than even odds. Not tremendously better than even, but 55, 60%.
All right, let's move on to segment number 2 in just a moment. We have a Rumble rant, folks. Jake, our producer in the booth, is fielding Rumble rants, so those are very helpful. We have a great Rumble crowd, 388 strong in the Rumble audience. That's amazing. 823 strong in the YouTube audience. Big crowd all around. We love to see that. Lloyd over on Rumble, Lloyd J. Hart, for $1. Sex is better with self-hating Jews. Well, we certainly hope so. We do our best. It's not for us to say. It's not for us to say, but we do the best we can.
I have been told that.
Okay.
I brought home a lot of shiksas who said that.
A lot of satisfied shiksas in Russell's past. Patrick Donahue.
A lot of pale, thin-lipped women.
Exactly. Patrick Donahue, thanks for the €10. Great to see the subs fly up. Thank you, Patrick. Think people are loving your honest takes on Palestine, Israel. It's important, honest, independent media flourishes everywhere, especially at these pertinent times. Thank you, Patrick. We appreciate the compliment. Appreciate the congratulatory sentiments. Yeah, we're up over 15,000 subscribers, folks. Thank you guys very much for helping us get there. Thank you guys all for being here. Like I said, if you're here for the first time, welcome to our show. We do live streams every Sunday night at 7 p.m., Wednesday night at 8 p.m., and then a Friday morning AM stream at 9 a.m. All those times are Eastern. Britsman, thanks for the $2. Keaton's dad is the best DD guest. Please call in more. So that's the other thing we have going on tonight, and thank you, Britsman. We are doing, for the first time ever, our post-show Q&A. So we have a real marathon show tonight because we're switching platforms and we're doing a post-show Q&A. So lots to keep track of from a technical standpoint. But like I said, folks, we have, 3 more segments to do here on YouTube. We will then take a 5-minute intermission and switch to Rumble. After the show concludes on Rumble, we'll take another 5-minute break during which you guys can submit questions in the Rumble chat. Rumble rants, obviously, will have priority since they're easier for us to see and they help us keep the show going. And Patreon members and paid Substack subscribers will be able to call in at that point to our Q&A. This is the first formal Q&A session that we're trying out. So thank you guys all for that. 007 Angelo, my favorite JOOs are back, and I don't mean Netanyahu and his defense minister. The land grab tactic is in full view now. It's totally disgusting. Yes, so is DC. Yep, absolutely, 100%. Ruthless criticism, thanks to the $5. You need to incorporate the cowbell into the tour. That will get them out. Yeah, you should have a cowbell. When it's time for everybody to meet up again, when the bathroom break is over, just ring that cowbell. Exactly. All righty, Roger Meadows. No love for Rockfin. So we're not streaming on Rockfin anymore for reasons I don't really want to get into. It's kind of like, from like a business standpoint, the whole cryptocurrency thing is just too confusing for us to figure out. And I feel bad accepting tips from people on Rockfin if I don't know how to withdraw them properly or if I don't know that the tip amount they give us is going to be what we take in. It just seems kind of sketchy. But we still have
very fakakta.
Yeah, it's a little fakakta. We still have a Rockfin channel. We still upload our clips to Rockfin, but we don't stream live there anymore. All right. Okay, so let's go to segment number 2 here. Folks, we had some news breaking over the past week and a half or so regarding the RFK campaign. Obviously, Robert F. Kennedy decided to end his run for the Democratic nomination and run as an independent, something that even critics of RFK like Russell and myself were at least somewhat excited about for the simple reason that we want to exert maximum chaos on the electoral system in 2024. But we obviously knew his Israel stance all along. That was a deal breaker for us before the war broke out. And then once the war broke out, his stance just became even more toxic because it was at the forefront of our minds. So we covered his opening speech. just because we kind of felt we had to. But here's an interesting development in the RFK campaign. And that, of course, is the resignation of his campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich, who leaves RFK Jr.'s presidential campaign. From the New York Times, Dennis Kucinich left his post as the presidential campaign manager for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and was replaced by Mr. Kennedy's daughter-in-law, a political neophyte best known for a memoir about her tenure in the CIA. Wonderful.
Yeah. We still get the RFK stands in the comments. Come on, guys. Isn't this getting a little untenable?
It's getting a little ridiculous, I would say.
Now he's put in the deep state daughter-in-law to run the campaign. Like, come on, man. Come on, let it go.
He didn't have anybody else.
Why you keep breaking our balls? Come on.
The campaign shakeup comes at a moment of renewed scrutiny on Mr. Kennedy's campaign. The political scion of one of the most influential families in contemporary American politics announced on Monday that he was ending his Democratic primary challenge to President Biden and would continue his campaign as an independent candidate. Mr. Kucinich's departure came as a surprise even to Mr. Kennedy's press secretary, who was informed of it on Friday afternoon by a New York Times reporter. In a subsequent news release, Mr. Kennedy said his campaign had, quote, benefited enormously from the political experience of Dennis Kucinich. Mr. Kucinich was not quoted in the release. Kennedy's new campaign manager is Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, a former CIA agent, memoirist, and documentarian who in 2018 married Mr. Kennedy's son, Robert F. Kennedy III. Amaryllis is a woman of extraordinary intelligence and drive who I am confident will take this campaign to the next level, Mr. Kennedy said in the news release. Later in the article, Mr. Kucinich, a former Democratic congressman who twice ran for president himself, has been with Mr. Kennedy, a leading vaccine skeptic and purveyor of conspiracy theories. New York Times just has to mention that every time they mention his name. Like, they cannot write an article without reminding their audience. Now, remember, he's into the vaccine conspiracy theories now. Don't get any ideas. Don't get out of line. Since he began his run for office in April, he introduced Mr. Kennedy at the Philadelphia rally where Mr. Kennedy announced his independent bid. Mr. Kucinich confirmed in a brief interview on Friday afternoon before the campaign release came out that he was no longer Mr. Kennedy's campaign manager. He said that he would not discuss any internal communications of the campaign. In the message to campaign staff members sent earlier on Friday, Mr. Kucinich praised the work of the powerful team that was ready to take the campaign in a quote-unquote new direction. The pro-World War III direction, apparently, is the new direction of the RFK campaign. That
the rabid Zionist direction.
Yeah, exactly. That patriotic goal is within sight, and I urge each of you to hold fast. Okay, so we'd have Kucinich quitting Friday afternoon. This video, I believe, was from Friday night because this is when Michael Tracy posted it. And so this was an event, I believe, in Miami, Florida, of RFK just going full neocon, full hawk on Iran, on China, and even on BRICS. So let's take a look because it's kind of suspicious timing that an event like this took place. You hear this kind of rhetoric from RFK, and you have the resignation of his campaign manager. So let's take a look here.
And China are one. Iran and China are one organism at this point. And they now, because of BRICS, they now control, and because of Iran's control of Venezuela, they control 90% of the oil supply in the world. If Israel was not there, China can blackmail the entire world with our energy supply. And that is the most disastrous foreign policy outcome. We have an absolutely critical, existential, strategic interest for being in Israel. Israel for supporting them. Israel has never asked for troops. They never will. What they want is our support, and they want our, and they need some of our weapons. So, and we need to do that. Israel has a legal right to be there. It is not an occupying force. Israel was created in 1940 after the Ottoman Empire. Israel has been, we were the first
not an occupying force.
It's our oldest ally. We've been there for 75 years. Not only have the Jews continuously occupied it for 3,700 years,
they won it in a card game.
Recognized after World War II, the Jews need a safe haven.
Right. So, I mean, there you have it. I mean, that is just a pro-war speech. That is just straight up warmongering. And we said this on the Jimmy Dore Show. We said this on our stream before we went on the Jimmy Dore Show, that RFK's anti-Ukraine war stance is kind of irrelevant now. It really doesn't even make that much sense now. Like, if you're anti-BRICS, you're hawkish on Iran, you're hawkish on China, and you're this staunchly pro-Israel to the point where you are seemingly, according to that speech and other statements he's made, perfectly willing to risk a global military conflict over Israel, then why are you opposed to Ukraine funding? Like, I don't even understand the logic there.
It is. It's because he's on board with he's not only on board with every hawkish premise of foreign policy.
Yeah, exactly.
He's on board with all of the most extreme neocon positions.
Exactly.
Except for this one.
Right. Like, why not just go all the way? Why don't you be a Ukraine hawk? If you were, they may have let you replace Biden. You know what I mean? I mean, Biden's getting old. Hey, you know, I mean, the vaccine thing is probably still a non-starter, but hey, is it worth a shot? I mean, I don't understand where his anti-Ukraine sentiment comes from, because it seems so inconsistent with all his other views. It's one thing to be a Zionist and to be anti-Ukraine, but that speech went far beyond just a commitment to Israel. I mean, that was a speech you could hear the average Democrat or the average Republican give. I mean, that is establishment militarist orthodoxy coming from him right there. There's no other way to describe that.
Well, and part of what turned us off to RFK from very early on is this guy's so full of shit that you don't even know when he throws out facts like, what did he say? China controls 90% of the world's oil. I don't think that's true. Like, he just says shit. And then if you call him on it, he'll say, no, I never said that. What I meant was China has 90% of the oil within the Mediterranean.
Right. Exactly.
But that's not what you said. But that's clearly what I meant.
Right.
You know what? Exactly. It's just that he's a clown. He just constantly just says shit that doesn't make any sense, that has no basis in reality or fact. And we've said this for a while. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. You got a guy who constantly says crazy shit, who constantly shows very like old school 1973-ish Democrat kind of instincts, very kind of hawkish instincts, particularly around Israel. It's like he has a foreign policy from the 70s. His understanding of the world seems to have come from the 70s. And within that context, his Ukraine position doesn't make any sense. Like, go full Cold War then. Like, what, I mean, it sounds like that's what you believe in. But that's where I say you're kind of dealing with a fucking nut. Like, that would be my explanation for why his views are inconsistent. I think he's unbalanced.
Yeah, so the reason I played that clip, the reason that's especially relevant is because Dennis Kucinich, his now former campaign manager, has a long and well-documented history of criticizing Israel. Okay, so this is a piece from 2010. These are just some headlines. We're not going to get bogged down in the details of all these.
Which, if you remember, just to interject, this whole thing started to come out around Roger Waters.
Right.
And listen, I said this back then too, and you can smear me with it if you want. I'm a Pink Floyd fan from way back, so right there he fucking lost me. Fuck that guy. As soon as he turned on Roger Waters, I was out of there. But a lot of people, in their desperation to believe in RFK, to continue to believe in his campaign, they blamed it on Kucinich. Do you remember that? A lot of people were like, "Yeah, Kucinich told him to do that."
Yeah, that's not true. And that always struck me
it doesn't
as
make
untrue
any sense
because of this. Here it is, 2007. Kucinich hires critic of Israel for a Hill panel. Elizabeth Kucinich joins UNRWA USA Board of Directors to advance humanitarian assistance to Palestinian refugees. Here's an op-ed that he wrote for The Guardian. Crimes against humanity in Gaza. Is it really a buffer zone or a bigger plan? By Dennis Kucinich. It's time to step back and ask if we want to support Israel if it wants to eject all Palestinians from their land. And so it never really made sense to me that a guy like Kucinich was his campaign manager from the outset because of this. I think Kucinich could kind of stomach it as long as things remained status quo over there. Now that this broke out and this is going to become an issue,
too much.
Every day RFK is going to have to go out there and forcefully defend Israel, claiming ridiculously, historically, that it's not an occupying force. I think that was too much for him to take.
Yeah.
And he said, I just can't do this anymore.
Yeah, he decided he didn't need a job that bad.
Yeah.
He'll go back to Cinnabon.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. I think that had to be it. I can't really think of anything else. To me, the timing is too coincidental. It wasn't the independent switch. It's not like, Kucinich is this, committed lifer Democrat. He was on board with him for switching to independent. It had to be this. It had to be this.
Oh, absolutely. Obviously. Yeah. Especially given that he doesn't want to talk about it.
Right. Exactly. Because if he talks about it at this point, he really has no choice but to go ham on his former client, right?
Right.
It's really the only choice that you have at this point. Folks, we have 1,004 people, 1,020 people now in the YouTube chat. We have a whopping 516 viewers over in the Rumble chat. So that's wonderful. Please hit that like button if you're here. Please hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Please hit that follow button if you are on Rumble. Once again, for folks who are still watching here on YouTube, that's amazing. We thank you for being here. The second half of this show tonight is a Rumble exclusive. So rumble.com/do dissidents. Get your account set up. It's free, obviously. Follow us over there. Go to that link and find us over there. In just a few minutes, we will be exclusively over on Rumble. Well, not a few minutes. Probably, what do we got? A couple more segments here. Beautiful. But the way that you can best help us support the show, the way that you can help keep this show going, is to go to patreon.com/do dissidents. That is what really makes this show work. Our patron supporters are the backbone of the show. You can go to patreon.com/do dissidents. You get several perks in exchange for signing up on Patreon. One of those is your name up in lights here on the Patreon scroll. Thank you, Jake, for hitting that. Jake's internet's running a little slow this evening, so that's probably why it's scrolling a little bit. The scroll has a little buffer quality to it this evening. But you do get your name up in lights on the Patreon scroll. You get call-in access to our Sunday night Q&As, which will be happening later on this evening. You also get, most importantly, access to 2 patron and paid Substack subscriber exclusive live streams. We do 2 live streams per month only for Patreon members and people who sign up as paid subscribers to our Substack. Those are a lot of fun. Those are uncensored streams over on Rumble as uncensored links. So you can go to patreon.com/do dissidents or dodissidents.substack.com and sign up. That really helps keep the show going. We talked on the Jimmy Dore show, we've talked on our show about how the censorship surrounding these kinds of issues that we're forced to talk about now is getting extreme. And so the best way to censor-proof the operation and ensure that we can keep doing what we do, no matter what kind of penalties we may or may not incur on these censorious big tech platforms, is to become a member. So patreon.com/do dissidents, dodissidents.substack.com. Memberships start at $5 a month, and then there are tiers on Patreon from there. But thank you guys all very much for your support. China Shill, thank you for the $5. Appreciate that. Speaking of cider, GF, girlfriend and I started brewing some mead with apples and mulling spice for next year. Oh, beautiful. Perhaps I could send some next winter for you dudes. Yeah, that would be lovely. That would be lovely. We could see if we can make that happen. I'll just have to hire a taste tester first,
Yeah, with the way things are going, I wouldn't plan anything for next year.
Right. Well, do you mean next winter or this winter? I guess you mean next winter, right? Because it's too late.
Yeah.
You probably have to brew that and ferment that for a while. But thank you for the thought, my friend. Appreciate that. Derek, thank you for the $10. Congrats for not falling asleep when Pasta and Kurt argued. Also, Russell was called a boy by Pasta made me think of Harvey Korman trying to get student price movie tickets in Blazing Saddles. They call us the New Dissidents boys sometimes. I think that's a term of endearment. They call us the boys.
boys,
Jake, are we done with that
exactly.
scroll? I think we're good. I think we hit the whole thing. It ran. Cool. Thank you, Derek. We appreciate that, though. And I thought I was very entertained the whole time. I wasn't falling asleep. I know some of the feedback was that Kurt was pretty lively, but it was fun. I mean, that made it fun.
we had a good time.
Yeah. No, you like a lively
I mean, actually, look. I mean, doing your own show and doing 3-hour sets as we call them. It's kind of nice having other people talking.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Where you can just sit back and be like, oh, let them. You get a little rest before you get back in.
I didn't feel like I was struggling to get points in. I felt like it flowed perfectly well. Yeah, I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. All righty, let's go to segment number 3 of the evening. File this one under Who Asked You? That's what I would file this under. George W. Bush was the keynote speaker this year at the Collective Amnesia Awareness Conference in Washington, D.C., where he gave his foreign policy expertise and his advice on how to handle
such as it is
the Israel-Palestine situation. So here's George W. Bush. Yes, George W. Bush speaking out against negotiation. Big surprise that is. Here's George W. Bush speaking to a room full of people, which is a question I have to ask. Who the hell shows up to hear what he has to say? How could you possibly? Worse
than that. And I know they're very scattershot, like they bring in everybody, but masterclass. What the fuck?
Yeah,
they had him on leadership. They had Hillary Clinton on what did they have her on? Was it also leadership?
No, it was like difficult decision making.
Difficult decisions.
Like yeah. They probably would have given her leadership, but they already booked Bush for that. So they had to come up with some convoluted alternate title to leadership for Hillary.
There's like having Charles Manson teach a class on passive resistance. Like what?
Exactly.
Like, what are you doing giving these goons a platform? And this is just looking at the fact that we're living in a society where George Bush was not driven out of all councils and discussions of public policy. The fact that this absolute abject failure, one of the most damaging presidents in American history, if not literally the worst president in American history, can just make the rounds and pontificate about global affairs. That is when you really know you have a completely disconnected aristocracy running the country that is setting aristocratic rules that have nothing to do with ability, accomplishment. It's all about pedigree.
Yeah, exactly. And so here he is chiming in on Israel.
Yeah, it's going to be chaotic, and it's going to be, look, it's a democracy, and in a democracy, the people's voices matter, and there's going to be a weariness. You watch, the world's going to be, okay, let's negotiate. Israel's got to negotiate. They're not going to negotiate. These people have played their cards. They want to kill as many as...
Look at this room full of morons. I mean, when you go to that shot, the debut of your Awkward Friends off-Broadway play where he dragged 8 people there because they feel obligated, so he doesn't drink himself to death that night if you don't show up. That should be the crowd for this. Look at the audience. Who are these fucking people? That's what I want to know.
I mean, what is this event? For real, though, what is it?
I don't know. I don't care. I didn't bother looking it up.
All right. Fair
That's
enough.
why I made the joke. Damn it, was to cover up the fact that I don't know what the fuck event this is.
I mean, it was a good joke on its own terms. So I figured, you knew, but you went for the good joke.
Right. Exactly. No. I actually went for the good joke in substitution of proper research. That's what in lieu of research, I went for the joke. I was actually going to look up the name of the event, but then I'm like, you know what? I thought of this fun joke I'll tell instead. That's better.
I mean, now you're really showing how the sausage is made, because that's like 80% of the shit we say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry, I got distracted by a weird super chat, but a very generous super chat. But here we go.
Israelis as they can, and negotiating with killers is not an option for the elected government of Israel.
I didn't negotiate with anybody. Look how things turned out. I'm great. I'm one of the best presidents in American history. People wish I was back. In fact, most of the people in this audience are probably dumb enough to wish he actually was.
They probably do. Most of the people who watch MSNBC.
Yeah, exactly.
Steadfast, but it's not going to take long. It's gone on too long. Surely there's a way to settle this through negotiations. Both sides are guilty. My view is one side is guilty, and it's not Israel.
All right. So just murderous insanity from the most likely of places, the mouth of George W. Bush.
I have the most obvious, most conformist view to the will of the military-industrial complex imaginable. Surprise! Right. I bet I shocked you with that take. No, really, George Bush has been one of the greatest examples of the Orwellian nature of your rank and file Democrats and their relationship to the media. It has been amazing. If you tell them now, don't you remember that liberal views on George Bush, he was kind of Donald Trump 1.0 for you guys?
Right.
Like he was the one who you would rant and rave about. Don't you remember that? George Bush was an honest Republican that you could have honest disagreements with. That's what they'll tell you now, because Michelle shared a fucking candy with him. Michelle rehabilitated him. That's it. If Michelle's good with him, her partner in crime, right? If Michelle's good with him, he's good with us.
They called him Hitler. They literally called George W. Bush
Oh,
Hitler.
Yeah. No, he was the threat to the norms and to democracy, and that was actually a lot more legitimate than those claims about Trump. I'm not saying Trump was, completely maligned unfairly, but certainly if you had a problem with Trump, how the fuck do you let this guy walk around in polite society?
Yeah, no, I mean, that really does expose the cognitive dissonance of liberals now, is the fact that they have a relatively favorable view of him. I mean, his approval rating was like 50% among Democrats during the Trump years.
Yeah. No, I think it still is.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And there he is, just towing the same sort of party line that we would expect the average Democrat or the average Republican to toe there. And you have an audience of people who apparently still give a shit what this guy has to say. It's just incredible. It really is. Really is an incredible thing to see.
Yeah, I mean, him, Bill Kristol, I mean, all of these people who, that is when your country is being led by deeply unserious people who are insulated, and that's really the key element to having a dissolute, incompetent aristocracy like that. They don't face the consequences of their actions. They're going to be rich either way. Yep. They're going to get those cushy jobs either way. It's the people who have to suffer for their decisions. And this is just one big circle jerk amongst themselves. They control the awards. They control the committees. They control the grants. They control the academic funding. They control they control the media. They control all of that. And with that level of control and with all of the wealth having been funneled to their class, they're able to just completely insulate themselves within a bubble where George Bush holding forth on public policy and foreign policy makes some kind of sense. If you really had to face the consequences of listening to assholes like this, you would never let this man speak on a stage again.
Exactly. We'll take a Rumble rant here. Lloyd J. Hart. Kucinich is an amateur of politics. As the manager, he didn't show demographics of Palestinian support in America. He didn't succeed in showing RFK where the votes are. Yes, it is Kucinich's fault. Okay. I thank you for the donation. I do not agree with that. First of all, that suggests that RFK would have changed his mind on this if he knew there were votes to be had? I don't believe that. RFK seems like a true believer. He talks like someone who's held these convictions for 50 years. This is what Russell says about RFK all the time. Russell's, 82 years old, so he has more of a memory of this than I do.
I've got that rare Benjamin Button phenomenon.
Yeah, right.
I'm actually
Exactly.
working backwards here.
No, but Russell talks about, I was, in all honesty, too young to have firsthand memory of this, but Russell talks about, when he was a kid, in the 70s, to be honest, 70s
As
and
a
early
child,
80s,
yeah.
right, as a child, he would hear, because he's a Jewish guy, as am I, he would hear people talk like this. RFK's stance is the real old school stance on Israel. He is to the right of where most Democrats and Republicans are nowadays. I don't think you just arrive at that out of political convenience. I think to talk like RFK requires an actual conviction that for some reason he has in his fucking head that they're not an occupying force. I don't think it's that Kucinich failed to show him polling data that said he'd do better if he took another decision. No, I think he's a true believer. I think that's why Shmuley likes him.
Okay, so this is part of what's interesting to me. Because usually when people reach my advanced years, they just want to sit in front of the TV with their hand in their waistband, and they're not as engaged as I am. I personally am fascinated to see people like Bill Maher, which we'll get into in the next segment, trying desperately to do the 1977 line on this, and it's just not working. In fact, if you pay attention to that Bill Maher segment, he's not getting a lot of applause from his audience. Right. There's a very dedicated portion of his audience, but mostly they're not clapping. And that is very different. Yeah, when I was a child, Israel and the Holocaust were inextricably linked in the American mind, and any criticism of Israel put you on the side of the Nazis that committed the Holocaust, and all attacks on Israel were an attack on all that was good, and all triumphs of Israel were to be celebrated. This is amazing after what these people suffered at the hands of the Nazis, and now these unreasonable, crazy Arabs are coming after them for no reason other than their hatred of Jews and anti-Semitism. And look at these heroic Jews. It's, they would, especially if you were in the Jewish community, they would draw a lot of parallels to the stories of the Maccabees and Masada and holding out against the Romans and the fort, and all of these kind of stories of Jewish heroism. And that mythology was played out in America. You'd have a lot of they had a mini series about the Holocaust when I was a child that was, kind of the Jewish roots. It was that they were trying to make it that event that Roots was for people. And it really is amazing now to watch them trying to pull the same old rhetoric. It's really the same old shit, but it's just not sticking with most of the public. And that didn't happen all at once. I mean, gradually there started to become some space to speak up for Palestinians. I mean, there was no space for that at one time. I remember the actress Vanessa Redgrave, I think it was, used to speak out for Palestinian rights and Palestinian causes. And she was demonized, the way they throw the ick on people, right? Like she was absolutely anathema for that, for speaking out and saying that there was something wrong with the way these people were being treated. Yasser Arafat was, he was one of these figures like Saddam Hussein, right? Just absolute evil, the way he was portrayed in the American press. And to see now they're trying to pull that. In fact, while we've been on the air, The Intercept just dropped an article about how the Israeli government is backing down on confirming their reports about murdered children and rape. Like they're backing off on that. Like they desperately want to reignite that view of the Palestinians and their motives and the motives of the countries around Israel. It's just not working anymore. And it is partly the internet, which, I've often talked about the downside of the internet. Is that an upside? Sure. Like they can't hide their crimes the way they used to. It was very easy when you just got your news from ABC, NBC, or CBS for them to just show you what they wanted to show you, and you didn't see anything else.
Right.
All you saw were very scary images of guys with machine guns dressed in a way that makes you feel, oh, they're not like us, right? And that was all they showed you. They didn't show you anything else. They didn't show you what the Israelis were doing to these people. They can't hide it now.
Exactly. We're going to show accounts of that surfaced on social media in our second half of the show, which is a Rumble exclusive. We're not going to show any graphic violence. I think it's in poor taste to do that anyway, but it is going to be very emotionally intense in ways that could have gotten the video an age restriction here on YouTube. So that's why we're going to show it on Rumble. So make sure you head over there for the second half of the show. But we have one more segment to do here. Before we do that, let's take some super chats real quick. First, think before you type. Thanks for the $1.99. RFK Jr., such a spineless coward. Great work, guys. Thank you. Appreciate the compliment. Free Sirhan, says DC, for $2. All right, now this is a strange one that kind of caught me off guard, Russell. They don't want me to read this for some reason, which is kind of strange, but they did give us $50, which is good for a cowbell ring. So for
but
those
they don't
of you
want
who
you to read it?
No, we'll talk about it later. But there we go. We will give you a cowbell ring for $50. Donations of $50 or more, or $49.99, we'll round up, are good for a ring of the cowbell as a tribute to our friends over at the Cowbell Left. And if you don't get that reference, if you're new here, go back and study up and learn the origin of that phrase. China Shill, thanks for the $2.
I could have used a little more cowbell.
Exactly. George W. Bush masterclass, getting away with murder. Yes, indeed. Nancy Jensen, thanks for your show. Really appreciate the perspective. I have really started looking at all the politics and media differently. Veil lifted. Well, thank you, Nancy. We appreciate that very much. China Shill, I'm sorry, we took that one already. Roger Meadows, thanks, Roger. Russell, were you ever mistaken for Danny Aiello? Yeah, I've heard people compare you to Danny Aiello.
I've gotten, over the course of my life, I've gotten Danny Aiello, I've gotten Sean Penn.
Really?
I have occasionally gotten Robin Williams. Yeah.
I could see, because I've seen some younger pictures of you on Facebook. I could see Sean Penn during like his bad boy kind of era, Yeah. Because you had the long hair as a young guy, right?
I did, yes.
I could see that. I could see that.
Jesus. I looked a lot like Jesus.
And for Jesus Christ. Yes, I've been mistaken for Jesus Christ as well.
I will tell you what, this is a promise for the next show. I will show you a picture of myself when I was 22, where the pictures were taken by a devout Christian in my photography class, so she wanted me to look like Jesus. But I already had the hair and the beard. I'll bring that for the next show.
So he brought that out. She brought that out in you. Lloyd, for $1 on Rumble. If Kucinich is so smart, why didn't he leave the moment he heard RFK Jr.'s position on Palestine? No, I'm not saying he's smart. I'm not giving him credit for running a brilliant campaign. I'm just saying that I don't think RFK's position on Israel is a result of having been poorly coached by his campaign manager. I wondered why Kucinich ever hung around for that exact reason myself. I'm surprised he didn't quit a while ago. I found it very perplexing that RFK didn't launch as an independent. Look, there's a lot about that campaign that I find to be very head-scratching. I don't claim to have answers, and I'm not saying that Kucinich is a genius. Your original question, unless I misinterpreted it, seemed to be that, or your first point, I should say, seemed to be that Kucinich steered RFK to his pro-Israel stance, and I didn't think that was true.
Well, especially,
but I agree, it's a mystery why he stuck around as long as he did. Yes, I agree with you on that.
Well, especially because, Roger Waters just did this Dark Side of the Moon Redux, and Kucinich wrote the liner notes. So how do you work for RFK at the same time?
How do you work for RFK? How do you square that circle? Willie Bragg. Thanks, Willie. I blame George W. Bush and Dick Cheney for all our problems in the world today, and I blame them for our economic problems and right-wing culture war today. It is it's probably a little more complicated than that, Willie, but I do broadly agree that there's been no more destructive president in history than George W. Bush. No question. And it's a good point that they really did lay the groundwork for a lot of this that's happening today, including all the culture war stuff, because don't forget, they ran in 2004, not on their Iraq war record or on their homeland security record. They ran against gay marriage in 2004. They stoked the culture war in 2004. That's how they won Ohio. And that's why they got a second term. All righty. I got one more segment, then we'll take a couple more super chats, and then we are off to West Berlin, as we say. Bill Maher is back on the air. Real Time with Bill Maher is back.
Thank God.
And thank God. Thank God they ended the writer's strike, because I don't know what I was going to do with myself if Bill Maher wasn't back on the air. But it's certainly a boon to this show, because we get to take the piss out of segments like this. So this entire panel discussion could have been fodder for an entire show. But here is Bill Maher's panel with former Bernie Sanders foreign policy advisor, Matt Duss, and I forget the guy's first name. Is it James Kirchick, the tablet magazine editor, the guy with the ears? Yeah, I think his first name is James. It flew out of my mind. I had it here, but I lost it. But here's Bill Maher responding to the Israel-Palestine war. He, of course, said at the beginning that Israel has the moral high ground and that they shouldn't lose it by being too draconian in their response. But as is very often with the case on Bill Maher's show, a lot of debates surrounding Middle East issues always come down to, in his mind, a litigation of the merits of Middle Eastern and Islamic values. And so here is Bill Maher ending on this point, which he has made so many times in the past, but in this context rings a bit different. Let's take a listen.
I just want to finish with the values first, because it's just amazing to me that the American left, so much of it, throws their lot in with people whose values I hope they don't share, but let's go through them. Because values and customs make a difference, okay? And the people of Gaza, by the way, if the Israelis did get rid of Hamas, they'd be doing a giant favor to the people of Gaza who hate Hamas too. But let's just go through the lists.
You know, it would really be great if they could get rid of Hamas without killing, hundreds and thousands of children, without killing hundreds of thousands of women. That would be great if they actually cared to target who they said that they were targeting. That would be a start, wouldn't it? Right?
Yeah, well, it would also be a start if you let them out of prison.
Right.
And let them fish their own waters and have an airport. And then they might not elect, and they did elect, people like Hamas. It might also be a start if Israel, in some kind of a half-ass Machiavellian maneuver, didn't fund Hamas in order to weaken the PLO and in order to create discord among Palestinians in order to avoid the kind of unity that might have led to the state that they claim they would like to see as a solution.
No, that's a great point. I mean, we have a real great brainstorm going here. But let's get back to Bill, because he makes the big bucks for a reason, I assume.
That's
because
not a valid assumption.
Look like us in most ways, values-wise. Maybe we're not doing it the right way. I don't know. Religious tolerance.
I mean, that I agree with you, but it doesn't mean what you think it means, Bill.
Religious tolerance. I love this. So he starts out, these are the values of Israel.
I don't know. Religious tolerance. That doesn't exist in Gaza. You're either Muslim or an infidel. And
I'm sorry, does it exist in Israel? Israel is a Jewish state
by its own
definition. Netanyahu is on record saying very loudly and proudly, Israel is not the home to all people. It is home to the Jewish people. That's a very large part of why you have this problem right now. So is there religious tolerance in Israel?
Not only that, and we're going to get into this, but I have to push back a little bit on that too. What the fuck does Bill Maher know about what the attitudes about religion are within Gaza? Because my experience with Muslims is their views can be very complicated about this, because they see Jews, maybe not the Jews that lock them in prison, but generally Muslims see Jews and Christians as people of the book. right?
Right.
You're all under that, and particularly with Jews, because they have the same dietary laws. Generally, Muslims find marrying Jews acceptable, whereas they wouldn't with Christians because they don't keep kosher, they don't keep halal, right? So the views of Muslims on other religions are more complicated than he's making it out here. I can't speak to Gaza specifically, but the idea that all Muslims hate all of the non-Muslims, that's a gross oversimplification.
Yep. Here we go.
Better be a Muslim. Female freedom, free and fair elections, free speech, gay rights. I see these Queers for Palestine.
Did you hear their sister organization, Blacks for the KKK?
How hilarious.
Good one.
I'm a gay
Good
man.
one.
I've lived in Berlin. This is a level of masochism that even I cannot comprehend.
This is such contemptible
This, hey,
scumbaggery.
Hey, look, Curious George grew up. He's on a panel. Kudos to him.
Yeah, exactly. We'll let this play out.
You know what? I'm going to just... can I just finish my list of pedophilia? I'll put that under don't ask. Child brides and so forth. Equality of the sexes, I'll categorize that under don't make me fucking laugh. The fact that, you know, these people think that this is where they should be aligned with, that these are the values that you support?
I think this past week has been a real important moment for a moral reckoning on the American left. Because there is a small, and I'm going to emphasize that, a very small, but growing and extremely loud faction on the American left that has revealed itself.
I don't know how
to
small
be
anymore.
Okay, well, I mean...
It was all over.
Okay. So this is just absolutely disgusting. Not disgusting because their points, broadly speaking, about the views and opinions that are prevalent in the Muslim world are necessarily wrong. He had that big throwdown when Sam Harris was on the show, Ben Affleck versus Sam Harris, where they talked about how a lot of views and opinions that are prevalent in the Muslim world and amongst Muslims in the Western world as well are incompatible with Western liberal values. They cited the poll, 78% of British Muslims wanted the Danish cartoonist, I forget his name, who drew a cartoon of the Prophet. They wanted him arrested. Those were 78% of British Muslims. So they are not incorrect to say that many Muslim values that are widely held and widely espoused by Muslim people are incompatible with Western values. And those points are perhaps relevant if you are discussing issues of immigration, education, women's rights, gay rights, right? If you want to say we have country A and country B, how much should we allow the views and opinions of country B to influence the already existing country A? Okay, that's a legitimate conversation. However, that's not the conversation we're having. The conversation we're having now is, does country A have the right to imprison, subjugate, and eventually genocide country B? And ought they use as justification for the awful and inhuman treatment of country B, must they or should they cite as justification for that, well, they don't share our values, so why would you speak up for them? The fact that Islamic values may be incompatible with many Western liberal values does not give Western governments the right to crush Islamic societies. It does not. And so to sort of merge those two conversations into one for the purpose of excusing genocide, which is what Bill Maher is doing right there, is absolutely vile and sick and disgusting. And yes, racist. This makes me sympathize with what Ben Affleck was saying to Sam Harris. That conversation was, I think, almost 10 years ago. At the time, I thought Ben Affleck was wrong, and he still is technically wrong. He's technically wrong because he was trying to just, you know, completely deny the reality that a lot of Muslim values are incompatible with Western liberal values. He was wrong, but he was not. He obviously was onto something when he smelled that these arguments are being used in order to excuse the mistreatment of Muslim peoples around the world. And mistreatment obviously, I'm a little embarrassed to have put it so mildly, because obviously mistreatment does not even begin to describe the crimes of the West against the Muslim world historically, and especially now when we are amidst an actual genocide, a world historic human atrocity.
All right. So this is something I think as we get into this debate, and you can see what lengths they're going to go to try to crush and delegitimize all criticism of Israel and what it's doing. You cannot get drawn into trying to argue that what Bill Maher is describing about the Muslim world is not true. It is I didn't use this clip when I showed the montage from the Palestine demonstration, but at one point the Israeli women said similarly, we saw a flag for the gay rights and free Palestine, and that doesn't exist there. And they're right. They're right. They're not incorrect there. But so I know that a lot of the left, particularly on college campuses, as Maher gets into, they've been bred with this idea of intersectionality, where they're trying to reconcile different struggles and different movements as all one unified movement against Western hegemony. And that's a gross oversimplification. No, the struggles of all peoples are not compatible. Some people who are marginalized hate other people who are marginalized. So yes, is Queers for Palestine? Now that's not unintelligible. I think that's very noble if you understand that that sentiment is not returned amongst most of those people. So when the left starts trying to get into painting this fantasy world where no, what do you mean? That's just racism. No, it's not true. And I had Keaton. I don't want to litigate the views of the Muslim world. That's not what this segment is about. But if anyone doubts what we're saying or is skeptical of what we're saying, Pew did a poll of the Muslim world where, in most parts of the Muslim world, the majority supported Sharia. The majority are against gay rights. Certainly the majority are against abortion rights. The majority are against women's rights. Not a slim majority, not so vast, 80, 90 percentile majorities. And I have in other episodes of the show, we have talked about this, about the implications of mass immigration of people who have values that are that incompatible with values that I think most people on the left hold dear and consider some of the better elements of our society, some of the better ideas that we have generated in the West, like freedom of speech. I worked for many years with Muslims, and I had a lot of debates with them. They were mostly from Turkey, which is the most Western of Muslim countries, and they didn't believe you should be able to draw a picture of Muhammad. They didn't believe you should be able to insult Muhammad. And I would tell them, well, then you don't believe in freedom of speech. And because they saw themselves as having more Western values and had actually a certain disdain for the rest of the Muslim world, they saw themselves kind of as more sophisticated. They would argue, no, we do believe in freedom of speech, but you can't insult the Prophet Muhammad. And it would become this circular argument. Well, then you don't believe in freedom of speech. No, we do. But it would just go around like that. So by the same token, I found Muslim people that I dealt with to be some of the most hospitable, moral, decent people I've ever dealt with. Like the kind of people you could leave a bag of money on the table and you know it's going to be there when you get back. Like they had very strong values. But they did have certain views on religion, on speech, on women, on gay rights that, no, I was not comfortable with. And I think most people on the left would not be comfortable with. And you can't get drawn into arguing otherwise because that invalidates you. Because it's going to be very easy when you're debating people like Bill Maher for them to make you look foolish if you try to argue otherwise, because they're in the right there. The point is, and that is, as Keaton says, that's relevant when you're talking about immigration. When you're talking about, do you want enough Muslims in your community who have views like this to be able to swing an election? Do you want that? Have you thought through the implications of that? That is a completely separate conversation, and you cannot allow them to make that the same conversation. Once you make that the same conversation, you lose. You have to predicate it on, even if all of that is true, that's not your country, that's not your culture. And if it's not your country, if you're not talking about this in terms of immigration, in terms of your own country, it's really not your business how other people want to conduct their society and their culture. What we're doing so well, we have a crisis of loneliness, isolation, suicide, drug addiction. We're in a position to evaluate other people's values and the way that they navigate the world. That's none of our business, and it's certainly not a justification for a genocide, and you cannot allow them to draw us into debating it on those terms, whether we agree with the values and all of the views of the Muslim world. It has absolutely nothing to do with the conversation.
Yeah, because that's exactly the point he's making. Well, they don't believe in women's rights or freedom of speech.
Right.
And so why would the left throw their lot in with them? I forget exactly the wording. I got rid of the video, or I'd replay it. Why would they rally to their defense when they don't share our values? Well, we would rally to their defense because they're fucking human beings who are being slaughtered. That's why.
Right.
That's fucking why.
And that's the left. That's what the left is supposed to be.
It's so fucking.
That's what the left is
horrible.
supposed to stand for. They don't have to agree with you for you to value their lives.
Right. Exactly. They're being annihilated. That's why you stand with them, because they're being annihilated, because they were locked in a concentration camp, and now they're being annihilated. That's it. The conversation ends there. I mean, the chauvinism of, well, I don't see why would the left queers for Palestine? Huh, that's like blacks for the KKK. Morons in the audience.
Well, I want to make one last thing clear in my observations, my own experience, because I don't want to be misunderstood on this. It's very important, because I know that we're going to be, unfortunately, this is going to be an issue for a very long time. What's going on in Israel now? Most of the Muslims that I knew, that I've dealt with, that I've spoken to about politics, respect the idea of plurality. Most of them do not want to impose their values on other Americans.
Right.
But they don't want other Americans imposing their values on them either. That's why, for example, in Canada, they started protesting the way that they're teaching transgenderism in the classes, because they don't want that imposed on their kids. But at the same time, most of the Muslims I know don't want they like the fact that in America you can be who you want to be. Like, most Muslims just want to be left alone to live the way they want to live according to their values. I'm not saying most Muslims who come here want to change the country into a Muslim country. I'm not suggesting that.
Right. Okay. All righty, folks. We're going to head over to Rumble in a few minutes. I'm going to put the link up on the screen here, rumble.com/do dissidents. That takes you to our channel. From there, you will see the live stream. It'll be the first item listed there. So rumble.com/do dissidents. I don't think we're allowed to list the link to the actual stream. It gets complicated, but we can give you the link to the channel. And once you get there, you'll see it. Can't miss it. Right there, rumble.com/do dissidents. We'll see you there in a few minutes, but we got some super chats to take care of right here. KN Kareem, thanks for the $9.99. They killed him poisoning Arafat. They can't find the poison what killed him. They keep saying he was a billionaire. I didn't doubt that was being paid by the CIA, but they stopped. But they stopped when he wasn't useful. Thank you for that. Derek, thank you for the $5. I don't think attitudes have changed as much as Russell thinks. CNN poll shows 71% of Americans feel Israel's response is fully or partially justified.
Well, all right, I'll take that. So we we talked a little bit about that earlier. Yes, you do have even people who are kind of taking the Palestine side are all saying Israel has a right to defend itself. So I would want to dig into those numbers to see what they mean. I'm not saying people en masse are articulating what we are. I recognize that. I think most of them accept the formulation that Israel was attacked and has a right to counterattack. I think most people are accepting that framing. But what I am telling you is for most of my life, certainly my early life, there was no discussion of yes, but. There was no but. And now you hear, even in the Maher panel, even Maher talked about the danger of going too far and creating a humanitarian crisis. I'm telling you, when I was coming up, they wouldn't have even talked about that.
Right.
Like it just wouldn't have even come up. There was no Palestinian side of the story.
Right.
So that's what I mean. It's not that everyone is where we are, but they're 25% towards where we are. And at one time, they were 0% of the way there.
Right. Indeed. Roger Meadows, I blame SCOTUS for electing Bush and Al Gore not winning Tennessee. Yep, Gore lost his home state. In that race. Thank you, Roger. John Locke, thanks for the $20. Russ could be a better-looking Danny Aiello in a remake of Hudson Hawk, but it doesn't suck, and the thieves are leftist Robin Hoods. Thank you, John Locke. Appreciate that one.
Thank you.
Lars and Rune, thanks for the $3 super sticker. Appreciate that. B, thanks for the $4.99. Thanks for bringing up how W. Bush ran on banning gay marriage and whipping up extreme levels of real homophobia in 2004. Gen Z doesn't know about it. You're absolutely right. They don't know about it because the liberals have completely memory hold everything they had to say negative about George W. Bush when Trump scared the shit out of them, right? They had to distort their own history to make Trump seem so especially abhorrent that forced them for some reason to rewire their brains in a way that, George W. Bush was a reasonable, honest guy. No, George W. Bush not only ran on homophobia, he won on homophobia.
Yep. I had a lib tell me George Bush never ruined anyone's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
To show how much better he was than Trump.
Just unbelievable. Just absolutely fucking extraordinary. Joe Mama over on Rumble, thanks to the $1. By the way, folks, we have 925 over in the Rumble chat now, 917 here on YouTube. That's amazing. Hit that follow button over on Rumble. Hit the follow button. We need people to subscribe to us on our free speech platform. It's incredibly important, so please hit that follow button over there. That's part of the reason we do these. Joe Mama, so ironic to see a lib trying to trash anyone else's culture because it doesn't respect free speech. Exactly.
That's why, to me, that is the highest liberal value, that you would defend these people without agreeing with their views on that. That's the essence of liberalism to me. Real liberalism.
Exactly. What did I do here? Jake, I think I screwed up and accidentally deleted one of the Rumble rants. Did I or no? Maybe I didn't. If I did, I apologize. T-Bone 316, thanks for the $5. I just stumbled on your channel last week. You guys are aces. Well, thank you. And good appearance at the Jimmy Dore Show. Thank you again. Please tell us how we can support your work. Thank you.
Well, we have a locker at the Port Authority.
Leave a duffel bag outside track 32 of Grand Central Station between the hours of 3:30 and 4:11 a.m. No, you can go to patreon.com/Due Dissidents. That's by far the best way to support our work here. I'll put that up on the screen for you here. If you would like to become a recurring member and supporter, Patreon members are the backbone of the show. They are what enable us to keep this going. So thank you all very, very much for that. Okay, we will take more Rumble rants once we switch over to Rumble. I want to get these YouTube Super Chats done so we can make the switch. So if you're Rumble ranting, we will get to you, we promise. We will be exclusively on Rumble starting in just a few minutes. Think before you type. Thanks for the $9.99. I remember back in 2008 when Bill Maher interviewed Michael Shore, and Maher was so upset when Mr. Shore said Israel is not worth an American life or an American dollar, yet he claims to be atheist. Yeah, I don't remember that one. That was on the Real Time show. I don't remember that interview, but that's an interesting point. Thank you for that. Leon Scott, thank you for the $5. We appreciate that. We thank you guys for your generosity with the super chats this evening. They're conservative religious people like most humans on the face of the globe. Yes, good point. Doesn't mean they should be in concentration camps. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Indeed. And it just, I mean, like I said, that's just chauvinism, right? I mean, because look, as we said, we don't have to relitigate this. I think we did a fairly good job explaining it. In certain contexts, those points are relevant. In this context, it's completely irrelevant. Not only is it irrelevant, it's just completely obscene to try and cite that as some sort of excuse for, well, why would the left care about these people? That's just absolutely disgusting.
You're justifying it by othering them.
Exactly. Leon Scott, again, apparently freedom of movement isn't a Western value. Right. Yeah, exactly. Good point again. Pete Sweet, FYI, sorry, Maher is Jirish. Yeah. Mother Jewish, father Irish. I know.
Yeah,
yes,
we
I know
know.
that about him. We know. We can tell. We didn't even need to know. He reads
Right.
Jirish.
Well, we all have a membership card.
Yeah, right, exactly. It says what you are. Roger, thanks for the $2. Russ, please introduce Keaton to A Bronx Tale. Great movie. I know A Bronx Tale. Of course I know A Bronx Tale.
Keaton's a cinephile.
My parents
with certain glaring gaps.
You know, when I first saw The Bronx Tale was I forget why we did this, but back when I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, my parents rented this van with a TV in back of it. You know what I mean? That was like a really cool thing. Like now everybody has a TV in their car. It's their phone. They can watch a movie. They can do whatever. But back then there was this van with a TV in back of it and a VCR. And it was like, I mean, that was like luxury living. To be able to watch a movie while you're driving was amazing. And we were driving my grandfather around, my Maltese Catholic grandfather, and he loved A Bronx Tale. And so we were watching A Bronx Tale in the VCR of the back of this rent-a-van. And I was too young to understand it. I've since seen it. It's great. It's based on a one-man play. You know, it's a great film. But that was the first time I saw it. I was like 5 or 6 years old in the back of a rental van. But thank you, Roger Meadows. Appreciate that. Summer of 1970, Free Palestine, Imprison Oligarchs. Yes. Think before you type. Thanks again, my friend. How could Bill Maher claim to be an atheist yet turn around supports an Israeli state founded on a religious doctrine? Yeah, he's a hypocrite. Of course.
Right. He has a problem with certain religions and certain religious people, certain types of religious people.
Yep, indeed. Hey, Russell, why don't we hit the Iron Maiden? We got 666 likes, 666 likes on YouTube. Thanks for the heads up on that, Jake. Doing it all tonight. AD Kid, Keaton, Russell, could you please do a webinar with RBN on how U.S. empire and Israel's apartheid and crimes against humanity have impacted the Middle East? I suspect we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. For those of you who don't know, we do the Post-Duopoly show with our friends at Revolutionary Blackout Network and Kit Cabello over at Hardlens Media. We do a little super group panel bi-weekly, and our next one of those is going to be tomorrow, October 16th, on RBN, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern.
It's like the leftist mafia, but not total assholes.
The real leftist mafia, the actual leftist,
leftist mafia.
Exactly.
A leftist mafia too cool to call our show that.
Yeah, exactly right. Tool Druid, your coverage of Israel-Palestine has been fantastic. Well, thank you. Thanks for keeping it real. P.S. Maher is garbage. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Okay, I think we got all of our ducks in a row. Now I just got to remember how to do this. Haha. No, we are going over right now to
going over the wall
exclusively. So we're jumping the wall from East Berlin here in YouTube world to West Berlin over on Rumble for the remainder of the program tonight. Go to rumble.com/do dissidents. That is rumble.com/do dissidents. We will see you guys over there in 5 minutes. We are going to start a 5-minute countdown, so do what you got to do. Get signed up. If you need to create an account, it's free, obviously. Subscribe to our Rumble channel, and you will see our stream over there once again. That is rumble.com/do dissidents. YouTubers, thanks for being here. Jump that wall. We'll see you over there on Rumble in about 5 minutes. Be safe and be well over here in YouTube land.
Courage.
All right, everybody, we'll take a quick break. We will see you shortly over on Rumble.
Please clap.